In 1977, director Alan Clark and playwright Roy Minton made a television play named Scum as part of BBC's Play for Today series. It was so graphic, violent, and shocking that the BBC banned it outright, refusing even to release a censored version. In defiance of this censorship, Clark and Minton decided to remake Scum as a theatrical release, with even more extreme violence and harrowing depictions of physical and mental abuse. The result? 1979's Scum is one of the bleakest, most brutal films ever made, and one of the greatest British films of all time. After its theatrical run, Scum was banned from British television. It would not be aired on a British TV station for 5 years. Scum is set in a British borstal, that is, a youth prison. It is the story of how a group of recently incarcerated inmates adapt to this world of corruption, predation, ultra-violence, and moral depravity. Roy Minton conducted extensive research while writing Scum. Every major incident depicted in the film comes from the eyewitness testimony of former Borstal boys he interviewed during his research. These events did not all occur in one institution or in the same year. In fact, this was a criticism leveled at Scum by its detractors, but this was always a weak criticism. Scum never claimed to be a true story, and a system which allowed the kind of actions depicted in Scum to occur with any sort of regularity, irrespective of exactly where and when the events occurred, was a corrupt and broken system. Scum is available to watch for free on YouTube. Here are a few comments from the comments section of the Scum YouTube video, which attest to the realism of the movie. And yes, I am aware that YouTube comments do not constitute hard evidence and are very much take it or leave it.
I had spent 16 months in Portland Borstal, 1977 to 1979, and watched this later that year. I have to say that Portland was quite a violent borstal. We never had any such as those with Davis in the film. My name is Davis also. Apart from that, almost all of the film was true to what Borstal was like. In 2004-ish, I was asked to speak on the Mark Lamar interview on Borstal's BBC. They couldn't realize that a bar of soap was used as a weapon, but they were.
I was 16 when I went there, an innocent boy, stealing cars, and came out hardened to the point I feared nothing. Fights and bar brawls were all part of my life now. 35 years ago, I changed all that, and am now reformed, not by prison, but by love.
My brother was sent to Borstal in '78 and was transferred to a youth custodial centre when the Borstals were abolished. The stories I heard and things I remember seeing at visitations weren't all that different from this film. Some of the screws were more hell-bent though, handing out floggings for minor things. This film for me is almost like watching a memory of a story I was told when I was young.
I worked with a lad who spent 2 years in these hellholes for accidentally hitting a ball of a car, which caused it to crash into a shop in his early teens. The stories of the abuse he told us about were horrific. He said this film was tame in comparison to the mental, physical, and sexual abuse some lads went through.
I knew a foreign girl who watched this film without knowing what a borstal was. She thought Scum depicted life in a normal British school, LOL.
A criticism I have heard of Scum is that it loses narrative focus by shifting the attention of the story from Carlin in the first half of the film to an ensemble of characters in the second half, the most important of these being Archer. A simpler version of this criticism is that the film changes its mind about who the main character is. First it's Carlin, then it's Archer. This criticism is based on a misunderstanding of Scum's narrative purpose and characterization. Scum is not the story of Carlin, nor is it the story of Archer. It is the story of Borstal. The Borstal itself is the main character. It is an omnipresent force of evil that damages every individual who interacts with it, both screws and inmates, morally, mentally, and physically. This is spelled out clearly in the great scene between Archer and the old screw.
You know, when I was out, I always reminded myself you can take something good from every experience, but the only thing I'll take from Borstal is evil.
Carlin and Archer play essential roles in the characterization of the Borstal. Carlin's story emphasizes the physical brutalization of the inmate. Archer's emphasizes the inmate's mental torture. All inmates and screws have some relationship with violence. They are either perpetrating it,
Speak when I tell you that.
or they are on the receiving end of it, or they are under threat of it.
You deliver a quarter of your snap to Striper here every week.
On the dot.
I don't smoke.
Well, you fucking will do now, slag.
The Screws use violence to ensure obedience to their regime, but also support the daddy system to ensure the steady flow of cash extorted from inmates under the threat of violence.
I get 70 pence for equipping the screw, right? Your cut's 5 pence and mine's 15. That leaves 50 pence.
If you're not a native English speaker, that dialogue can be hard to understand. Basically, the Borstal daddy taxes the money the inmates sneak in, ensuring payment with the threat of violence, and the Screws take 70% of the tax collected, leaving the daddy with 30%. In this scene, the daddy, Banks, has set the tax at 50%. The governor presides over this deeply corrupt system and takes the Orwellian approach to protect it by benefiting from the order it brings while simultaneously denying its existence.
I will have no violence in this institution. There is no violence here.
For all inmates in the Borstal, violence is inescapable. Carlin is presented with a choice. He can suffer under it, receiving beatings and constant threats from the daddy gang and the Screws, or he can take over and wield violence himself. Carlin's coup is motivated more by self-preservation than by desire for power or money. When his position as daddy is challenged by a black inmate, he reacts with extreme aggression to ensure his dominance.
Where's your tool?
What fucking tool?
This may seem brutal and even evil to a casual viewer, but Carlin's behaviour is entirely rational within the corrupt system that the governor and Screws have encouraged to take root in the purgatorial nightmare world of the Borstal. Carlin has a simple choice. He will perpetrate violence or he will become its victim. There is no middle ground. The regime has forced Carlin to undergo a process of brutalization. By ascending to the position of daddy, Carlin not only assures his physical safety from the other inmates, but the Screws as well. After Carlin seizes power, the Screws cannot attack him. To do so would weaken him in the eyes of the other inmates and thus diminish his effectiveness as daddy, which the Screws can't have because they want to continue receiving their cut of the money extorted from the inmates. It's worth noting that Carlin's regime is less brutal than the previous one. Under him, racist attacks and bullying of weaker inmates are ended, so his ascent to power is not solely motivated by self-preservation, but also by a desire to see other inmates treated better. Carlin's empathy is emphasised at the end of the film when he leads a riot in protest against the selficide of Davis, following Davis's by a trio of older boys, and subsequent neglect by the Screws. Archer is the only character in Scum who is largely impervious to the use and threat of violence. He does not pay the daddy tax.
That lot thought I was some kind of nut. Violent psycho, you know? So I give him this wild stare about the eyeballs. They don't give me no bother.
And he doesn't seem to care much about the violence inflicted on him by the Screws.
Not having me the bastards.
However, he still suffers. Archer's suffering is almost entirely mental. He is deprived of any literature that could be considered even remotely stimulating.
Then why haven't I been allowed the 2 Dostoevsky novels you received for me?
When Archer is in lockup, the Screws use boredom as a weapon to torture him, and he is denied his right to a book. He complains that there isn't even anyone he can have a stimulating conversation with.
What am I doing here? Why aren't I on another wing where there might at least be somebody to talk to, where I could be civilised?
Any attempt he makes at self-expression is immediately crushed.
Archer!
Sir?
Report to my office!
When he attempts an honest conversation that goes beyond the bounds of the Orwellian strictures of the Borstal, he is shut down.
I would like to suggest a discussion on the nature of trust.
Are you sure that's not a matter for you to take up with your housemaster?
The deprivation that Archer complains about has a constant saltwater effect on his psychology that erodes his self-control to the point of collapse. During a conversation with the Screw, he launches into an angry diatribe.
Although you have spent your life in the prison service, you are still only a basic officer. Now, who gets the stick for that? Us. Who pays for that daily humiliation?
A viewer may look at Archer's rebellious behaviour and ask, why does he bother? Why not just keep your head down, do the time and get out faster? The film is aware of this question and gives voice to it.
Haven't you seen enough of them anyway? Why don't you keep your nose clean and get out?
But like any great movie, it gives only a partial response, then lets the audience ponder the rest.
Boredom. Nah, never was much good at that.
Archer says he's doing it out of boredom, but this is a minor motivation. He won't tell the Screw the real reasons. It's got nothing to do with vegetarianism. Archer is putting on an act. He's not a vegetarian. He just wants to cause as much bother for the Screws as possible.
vegetarians. I've shit 'em.
Archer's act, like Carlin's brutality, is a defense mechanism. If Archer played along and behaved like a good little boy, he would have been targeted by the daddy gang. It is because he goes barefoot, refuses to eat meat, and causes constant bother for the Screws that the gang thought he may be too much of a nut to bring to heel, and possibly a violent nut who could hurt them for their efforts to do so. Like Carlin, Archer can't, as the Screw puts it,
pass the time quietly.
To do so would be to submit to a regime of violent oppression. Archer's rebellion is not motivated by petty insolence, but by a desire to preserve his physical safety and psychological well-being. It's also worth noting that if all inmates imitated Archer, the daddy system would collapse and the corrupt Screws would not be able to enrich themselves at the expense of their charges. And the Screws are bastards. Causing them bother and being a constant headache for them is a positive good in itself. But the main reason for Archer's rebellion is the retention of his identity and sense of self. To surrender is to be subsumed by the system. We see this in the character of Davis, who meekly submits to both the daddy system and the authority of the Screws. Davis is ultimately annihilated by the system, not because he resisted it, but because he submitted. The death of Davis emphasizes the importance of Archer's rebellion, both as an act of defiance against an institution of total evil, and as the only option left to a man who refuses to participate in violence, but who will not become its victim. Archer does get a severe beating at the end of the film. Following Davis's death, the boys riot in protest. After the riot, Archer, beaten to a bloody pulp, is dragged through the corridor and tossed in a cell. He is dragged out alongside Carlin and a black inmate who has shown aggressive resistance to the Borstal system in a previous scene.
Oh, he's dead! He's killed himself in the scrubs! He's dead! Oh, you fucking bastard!
Clearly, these three resisted most strongly when the Screws put down the riot. That Archer was willing to fight shows his bravery in the face of violence. He's not just some wanker looking to cause bother, he stands by his principles and is willing to take a beating for them. If the other boys in the Borstal had Archer's bravery, the institution would collapse in a week and have to be reformed. Archer's rebellion is not petty or self-indulgent, it is heroic. The scene of the three bloody, wounded heroes being dragged through the corridor and dumped in cells is a standout example of Scum's excellent direction. The audience is shown that Carlin, Archer, and the Black Rebel all put up heroic resistance. There's no clunky dialogue to explain this, or excessively dramatic battle scenes. Just a brief aftermath shot. This single shot tells us a lot about these characters, as well as the brutal extremes the Screws are willing to go to in order to maintain the authority of the corrupt regime. Superb direction from Alan Clark. An important thematic point in Scum is the complete disengagement from British society by young men. The fact that this disengagement spans across a broad class spectrum is emphasised by the character of Archer. The other boys and young men in the Borstal are of lower socioeconomic background than Archer. This is most evident from their accents.
I'll run this fucking gaff, and you're dead if you come any of it in here.
But Archer is very clearly well educated and middle class.
How's Mecca these days, Antrim? No further information through as yet, sir, although I am meditating whenever possible.
I see.
The character closest to him in education and the only one capable of engaging in verbal sparring with him is the governor.
Have you read The Life of St. Francis of Assisi, Archer?
No, sir. Though I'm sure it's a most engrossing epistle, sir.
Scum is not some class warfare piece of trash trotted out to the applause of sanctimonious snobs, gleefully playing their part in a haughty reprimand aimed at scummy gammons. Rather, it is a condemnation of a British society which has alienated a significant portion of the male youth, and the sadistic manner in which these youths are treated when they stray from the prescribed behaviours of the regime. The relationship between Archer and the governor is particularly fascinating for the archetypal role the governor fulfills. The governor is the dark inversion of Archer. Both are idealistic, determined, stubborn, intelligent, and have very strong personalities. Archer represents the individual's desire to free oneself from the dogmatic strictures of an oppressive system. The governor represents the individual's symbiosis within that system. Archer refuses to become one with the machine. The governor enforces terror on behalf of that machine. The fact that these two characters are remarkably similar suggests states the gap between individualism and conformity is not a chasm, but a few short steps, a few small choices. Archer is still imprisoned because he has chosen independence.
Haven't you seen enough of the maniac? Why don't you keep your nose clean and get out?
If Archer had bent the knee, he would no longer be in Borstal, but he would have become a slave to the system, and in doing so, lost his identity as a free-thinking individual. He would also have to deal with the shame of having submitted when he came face-to-face with a system that he knows is
evil.
We live in a time when shame and honour are becoming increasingly foreign concepts. A brief glance through TikTok will confirm that dignity is now an alien concept to many.
I'm gonna show you what this fucking Kentucky boy's about, baby! Woo! Let's go! Whoa!
I have no doubt that if you forced a room full of young people to watch Scum, Ludovico technique would of course have to be employed to keep them from retreating into their phone every 3 minutes. Many of them would be genuinely perplexed as to why Archer does not submit to the regime. After the movie, you unbind the kids from their seats and explain to them Archer rebels because he has a strong sense of self-worth and honour, and refuses to suffer what he considers a great indignity by surrendering himself to the control of a system he knows to be utterly corrupt. He also does not want to live with the shame of such a surrender. He chooses to suffer through a longer sentence so that he can hold his head high the rest of his life, knowing that he held out. When you're finished explaining this, many of the kids look at you like you've got two heads, baffled as to what the hell you're talking about. Archer is unlike any character you see in modern media today. He is genuinely stoic, not the straw man stoic, a statue of a man who never cracks a smile and shows zero emotion. A modern stoic, what in the 70s might have been referred to as Zen. Archer is self-possessed. He does not chase anyone's approval or put on a pathetic display designed to court much craved attention and project a particularly cherished public image, or get overly emotional about a bad situation. Archer has a deep masculine strength. Masculine strength is poorly understood today. It is often misinterpreted as being the loudest guy in the room, or alpha LARPing.
So now what I want you to do is, ladies, real quick, don't fucking waste my time. Rate the guys. You sound like a stupid ass bitch. I'm trying to figure out why you rated me a 2 and you just gave him a 9. You gave me a 2. You only gave me a 2 because of the whole interaction that we've been having, right? So do me a favor, get the fuck up and get the fuck out.
Thank you.
Yeah, get out.
Quick side note, this prickly little pug-faced pudgy pork pie is an excellent illustration of the Edmund Burke quote, "Rudeness is the weak man's imitation of strength." We've all met guys like this. They are among the most insufferable human beings on the planet. Another misinterpretation of masculinity is physical overbearance, or looking big and shredded, which is of course only superficial masculinity. True masculine strength is contained within, not projected outward in a showy display. Characters like Archer, masculine rebels with interesting personalities and an effortless cool, have completely disappeared from modern movies and TV. Rebels in movies and TV today look like this.
Do it! Kill her!
Or this.
They're hunting me. You have to help me.
You want my help? Take this. Walk into the middle of the desert and bury it in the ground.
What about the fight?
The fight is done. We lost. The time of the Jedi is over.
Or this.
You can drop it. Bitch act.
Or this.
It's what I did when I was your age.
What if I don't want your life?
Or that. Those characters are many things, but one thing they are not is challenging. They do not challenge the viewer. They make no demands on the viewer's intelligence, critical thinking, or moral outlook. They're just one-dimensional cardboard cutouts designed to appeal to modern audiences. Hollywood has forgotten how to write rebels. Fortunately, not everyone has. A show which offers genuinely masculine, stoic, and interesting rebel characters is the recent superb series Shogun. Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays Lord Toranaga, was one of the leading producers on the show and insisted that the show be as authentic to ancient Japanese history as possible. I wonder how the BBC would react if a British producer insisted that an adaptation of, let's say, Great Expectations was authentic to English history.
All she taught me was how to be her weapon of revenge.
Look at me!
used against all men.
Something tells me he wouldn't be the show's producer for very long. Rebellion is a major theme in Shogun. John Blackthorne rebels against his captors, and later against the aspects of Japanese culture that he considers barbaric, refusing to participate in them. Lord Toranaga is in unofficial rebellion against the ruling council, and Mariko is in rebellion against her husband, and later Lord Ishido. These rebel characters are all deeply interesting. They have well thought out and compelling psychologies. They are conflicted, often morally grey, complicated characters. They challenge the viewer. Shogun will almost certainly end up the best show of 2024. No, it's not Fallout. Believe me, Fallout is not the best show of this year. It's not even close. I will concede that Fallout casts a good spell. Many viewers will watch it and come away thinking that the show is really good. You could call this the Force Awakens effect, but for the sake of variety and for the sake of not talking about Disney Star Wars, let's call it the Spider-Man No Way Home effect. You have a great time with it in the theater, but soon afterward you realize that it's actually kind of mid. And later, you suspect that it might even be shit, and that the premise doesn't make any sense, and the ending doesn't make any sense, and that it destroyed the character of Doctor Strange by making him into a mind and the nostalgia baiting was absolutely shameless, and they emasculated Dr. Octopus, and why the hell is Jamie Foxx here? The Amazing Spider-Man 2 sucked, and he sucked, and why isn't there more William Dafoe? I want more William Dafoe. Is Zendaya secretly a crap actress? How is that fat kid able to do Doctor Strange magic after 5 minutes? It took Strange months of ceaseless practice. This cheapens Strange's arc. Oh my god, did I actually like this shit? How did anyone think this was good? But then, you calm down and you remember that the past is a foreign country and they do things differently there. When No Way Home came out at the end of 2021, Marvel was in a truly dreadful place. That same year, they had released Shang-Chi, Black Widow, and The Eternals. This was a time when MCU fans still had a lingering faith in the franchise, when people still thought Avengers Endgame was a good movie, and when famous actors running around on screen in children's spandex Halloween costumes didn't look absolutely ridiculous. There was still some juice left to be squeezed from the superhero lemon. Audiences wanted to love Spider-Man No Way Home. They wanted Spider-Man, the classic superhero they all knew and loved, to be the antidote to lame-ass, third-rate upstart wannabes like Shang-Chi and Jon Snow's brother dressed in spandex. And so, Spider-Man No Way Home came to be thought of as a good movie. I will be endeavouring to cure the culture of that delusion in a future video. History has a habit of repeating itself. Gamers have been disappointed by the attempts to bring their beloved franchises to the big and small screen. Tomb Raider 2018, starring that chick who was a thing for about 5 minutes a million years ago, was shit. Halo was absolutely wretched. The Witcher was ravaged beyond recognition by a coven of activists at Netflix. The Super Mario Bros. Movie was nothing more than a banal series of Easter egg sandboxes, and Netflix's Resident Evil series decided that instead of this, what Resident Evil fans really wanted to see was this.
I know sometimes it's not so bad to just get along.
With Carol.
Netflix's Resident Evil series was likely the worst video game adaptation of all time. And you know what? Fuck this, man. I'm coming out and saying it. Fuck it! The Last of Us fucking sucked! Fucking thing sucks! Video game adaptations are infamously terrible and have been for decades. We all know the vast potential contained within the great video game IPs, and we're ready to see it unlocked. So when Fallout showed up, audiences really wanted to like it. The cultural conditions were in place for Fallout, a show that is mid at best, to be regarded as brilliant and groundbreaking. And so, the spell was cast. If you are still held spellbound under the delusion that Fallout is a good show, I suggest you watch Muller's excellent video on the series. What the fuck was I talking about? Probably the best scene in Scum in terms of thematic delivery and characterization is the conversation between Archer and one of the old screws. Archer indicates his belief that the screw has spent much of his life in a self-imposed prison.
How long are you done?
A long time.
That's an hefty sentence, Mr. Duke. One way or another in prisons.
But the Screw does have a legitimate answer for this.
Public service, Archer.
This exchange highlights the fundamental and irreconcilable differences between not just Archer and the Screw, but between different generations of British men. The Screw comes from a generation that believed themselves to be the victors of a great war, the conquerors of evil, the very embodiment of British greatness. The American counterparts of these men would later bestow upon themselves the modest title, the greatest generation. The Screw regards public service as an honour because he still believes in Britain. For Archer and most other young British men of the time, the idea of public service is a completely foreign concept. It belongs to a bygone era. Archer's generation have grown up in the economically depressed hole that was 70s Britain, and the idea that they owe anything to this squalid, depressing little heap of a country which has given them nothing and which offers them no prospects is, to them, absurd. This scene between Archer and the Screw also highlights the difference in intelligence and insight between them. Archer understands that both he and the Screw are prisoners of the same system, albeit with different privileges. The Screw disagrees, but his own words betray the truth of Archer's assertion.
I was happier in prison. Now I'm going to finish my time with a bunch of snotty young hooligans.
This is a brilliant example of great dialogue. The speaker says one thing, but inadvertently communicates another.
I was happier in prison.
He confirms Archer's viewpoint while simultaneously disagreeing with it. This dialogue conveys the complex combination of conscious and subconscious forces involved in human communication, as well as the chasm that exists between Archer and the Screw in terms of critical thought and political outlook. It's worth considering how Alan Clark has blocked this scene. Archer is placed on the left of the frame while the Screw is on the right, the possible intention of the director being to visually emphasize the respective politics of the two characters. Archer, the individualistic, anti-authoritarian youth, is on the left. The Screw, an unbending authoritarian, is on the right. Bear in mind, the political spectrum we are discussing here is that of the 1970s, not that of today. Given how deliberate a lot of the visuals in Scum are, and the very clearly defined left-right blocking in this scene, there is a good chance that Alan Clark blocked the shot like this deliberately, consciously infusing it with political symbolism, or it could just be a happy coincidence. The final lines of Scum, spoken by the governor, emphasize the hypocrisy of the Borstal system.
There will now be 1 minute's silent prayer for our departed friend.
The governor refers to Davis as our departed friend, but in Borstal the boys are not even allowed to have a given name.
Look, is there any chance of you calling us by our Christian names? I mean, it's the only reminder of our identities we have left.
And when addressing the Screws, they must introduce themselves with their numbers first. The number comes before the name, as it has primacy over it.
You're a number, lad. That's all you are, a number. A number, 4 digits. That's all you are.
This instills in the inmates the idea that their identity is secondary to their classification within the Borstal system. They aren't individuals, they're numbers.
A number, 4 digits. That's all you are.
The insinuation that the governor or the Borstal treated Davis like a friend is, like the system itself, a lie. An important aspect of the final line of the movie is that Davis is not named. The governor refers to him only as
our departed friend.
Here, the inmates are nothing. They're hooligans to be squeezed for cash, given a good beating, then, as the excellent old English expression goes, tossed onto the scrap heap, fucked out into an uncaring, poverty-ridden slag heap of a country masquerading as a first world nation. In the Borstal system, these boys have no names. Even in death, Davis is not given a name, because in this suffocating purgatory in which individuality is systematically eradicated, the primacy of the system is paramount. The inmate is not a person. He is not an individual. He's a hooligan, a number. He is
Scum.
The most notorious and, at the time, most controversial scene in Scum is the greenhouse scene, in which Davis is gang by 3 older boys. Obviously, I can't show that part of the scene in this video, nor would I even if I could, because it is, by design, extremely distressing. But the scene is easy to find. It's the most watched section of the film on YouTube, by far. Make of that information what you will. During the attack, the camera holds a close-up on Davis's face while he struggles against the vastly superior force of his attackers. The director, Alan Clark, uses this horrifying shot to force the audience to confront the violent reality of the Borstal system head-on. He also wants to give a human face to the victims of the vicious acts that were going on in Borstals in Britain at the time. Bear in mind, every major event depicted in the film is based on true stories collected from former inmates of the Borstal system. The rape of Davis takes place in a greenhouse. This is thematically important and has strong symbolic meaning. A greenhouse is entirely transparent. Anyone who cares to look can see what's going on inside. The fact that such extreme abuse can take place in an entirely transparent space emphasizes the willing blindness of the Borstal system to the abuses going on within it. While Davis is being violated, a screw hears the commotion and looks into the greenhouse to see what's happening. He witnesses the brutal assault clearly, but does nothing other than crack an evil little grin. He waits until the gang are just about done with Davis, then demands they get back to work. The assailants are still getting their clothes back on when they walk past the screw, while Davis wails behind them. The screw very deliberately makes a point of looking away from the scene, communicating to the gang that as long as they don't cause any real bother, that is, bother for the screws, this trifling self-indulgence can be safely ignored. The screw looking away also symbolizes how the Borstal system itself willingly ignored the horrible abuses going on within it. The assailants know the screw knows they know he knows, and no one cares, because as pointed out by Banks earlier,
Davis, you're nothing.
Davis plays no part in the daddy system and so will not be protected by the screws. He has also demonstrated publicly that he poses no physical threat. He will not resist. The gang know that Davis is free meat. The only person that doesn't know this, unfortunately, is Davis. Even as the gang stand over him in preparation for the assault, Davis is oblivious to what is about to happen to him. This is because Davis is under the delusion that as long as he behaves himself, doesn't cause any bother, and does what he's told, or, as the old screw puts it,
pass the time quietly,
he'll be left alone. The Borstal cures him of this delusion. The of Davis is a brutal act of violence in itself, but also a metaphor for what the system does to the inmates, both physically and psychologically. I've always wondered about the evil little grin on the screw's face when he peers in at Davis being pounded harder than the Bank of England coin press. Does he hate Davis and enjoy watching him suffer? Does he hate all the inmates and is just pleased to see one of them subjected to such a vicious attack? Or is he just that much of an evil that he is gratified by the sight of human suffering? In any case, this subtle expression is a brilliant bit of acting. I also love the look on this guy's face, one of the attackers, when the gang are just about wrapping things up with Davis. His expression communicates mild amusement, like this is nothing more to him than a harmless bit of fun. Alan Clark's actor direction in Scum is supreme. Every character feels real, grounded, and believable. Mick Ford as Archer and Ray Winston as Carlin are obviously the standouts, but there isn't a single performance in this movie that isn't great. The fact that this level of realism and verisimilitude in the performances was achieved using mostly teenage actors is an incredible achievement. I could go on for hours about the quality and subtleties of the acting in Scum. Instead, I just want to focus on a few reaction shots. Great actors don't just act, they react, they listen. When an actor does a good job of listening in a scene, it improves the performance of the actor he is listening to and elevates the entire scene to the next level. Scum is full of great reaction shots. Look at the intense mix of curiosity and judgment on Ray Winston's face in this scene as he listens to Archer.
Transferred from Dover.
Oh, nuisance.
No? Just told him I was Christ.
In this scene, near the end of the movie, watch Archer's face as he worries about the fate of Davis.
That includes you, Archer! Come on, move yourself!
This one is my favourite reaction shot in the entire movie. Carlin, at the end, reacting to the screw's insistence that he eat, which will encourage the other boys to shut up and eat and dispel the danger of a riot. The utter disgust and rage is palpable on Carlin's face, and Ray Winston throws his entire body into the performance. It was obvious from his performance in Scum that Ray Winston wasn't just a talented young actor, he was special.
Where's your tool?
Following his nightmare experience in the greenhouse, Davis commits self-aside. Apologies for the ridiculous euphemism, but YouTube does have strict rules about the uttering of certain words. Davis's self-aside is the result of the bullying he receives at the hands of the other inmates, the greenhouse incident, and finally, his utter neglect by the screws. The only time the inmates show any real solidarity or unity is in the final scene. After Davis's self-aside, they sit in the cafeteria in silent protest, refusing to eat. The tension builds up like steam in a boiler until it finally explodes in a glorious orgy of destruction. Again, superb direction from Alan Clark. The chaotic riot creates a strong visual contrast with the last scene, in which the inmates are assembled in a neat square facing the governor and the screws. This sudden contrast infuses the end of the movie with a strong visual dynamism. The riot also sets up the film's final visual metaphor, which communicates the nature of the entire Borstal system. This metaphor is expressed visually across the three final scenes. The riot symbolizes chaos, more specifically youth crime. The corridor scene, in which the heroic trio are dragged, beaten, and bloody into cells, symbolizes violence. Finally, the neat square of inmates obediently facing the screws symbolizes order. Chaos, violence, order. The system deals with chaotic youths with violence. Then there is order. A simple, brutal system. Of course, this system creates resentment and vengefulness in the inmates, which they will inflict on other inmates and, upon their release, on society. And as for the inmates that perish along the way, well,
you're nothing.
Scum starts with a shot of Davis and ends on the governor. This is a visual couplet which symbolizes how the weak inmate is subsumed and destroyed by the brutality of his incarceration, by the Borstal itself. The ban on Scum was finally lifted in 1984. Mary Whitehouse, the OG woke scold, a morality campaigner and ultra-conservative activist, pursued a High Court case against Channel 4 for showing the film. She was initially successful in prosecuting Channel 4 for the crime of allowing the British people to view one of the greatest British movies of their generation, but the court decision was later overturned on appeal. Today, Scum is highly regarded among British cinephiles and regularly appears on greatest British movies of all time polls. It's generally regarded as an important film politically, in that it contributed to the abolition of the British Borstal system, which was abolished in 1982, and because the film openly and brutally defied the censorship of its time. In spite of this recognition, Scum has not received the credit it deserves as a technically and artistically brilliant piece of cinema. Alan Clark's masterpiece is much more than an important cultural moment in British history. It is one of the great British movies. The writing for Scum is nothing short of flawless. It is a masterclass in naturalistic dialogue. The quality of the dialogue is mesmerizing. The insults, the turns of phrase, the contemporary slang that infuses the exchanges with realism. It's absolute poetry. Scum is one of the most quotable movies of all time. It would take a writer of Roy Minton's greatness to write words that do justice to Roy Minton's Scum script. So let's finish by just enjoying some of Scum's best lines. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by clicking the join button below the video and becoming a member. Thank you to everyone who has become a member so far. Your support is greatly appreciated. Be sure to comment below with your favourite Scum line.
How we chat it? Speak when I tell you, lad. And what did you hear?
Nothing, sir.
Well, I'll tell you here and now, lad, that nothing was not the correct information.
Jesus Christ, you must love it.
I don't smoke.
Well, you fucking will do now, slag. I said right.
That was,
And what the hell are we doing, you Black Brixton slag?
You know what I used to do with my girlfriend?
Are you being insolent, Archer?
Hold hands. We used to hold hands.
Wait, Carney. I'll run this fucking gaff. And you're dead if you come any of it in here. I've got fucking overheads, haven't I? Haven't those bastards heard of inflation?
I'm finding myself strongly drawn to Mecca, sir. Very strongly indeed.
Mecca, Archer!
I said, get back, shithead!
Black bench, you bastard! I'm the daddy now. Next time I'll fucking kill you!
I'll have you.
No punching in the face! No kicking in the goolies!
Where's your tool?
What fucking tool?
This fucking tool!
I give you my fucking coffee and you think you can sit there and have the piss out of me?
And I'm gonna carve you two bastards up. First chance I get. Just remember that, the pair of you.